Baie dankie. Ek waardeer dit so baie.
Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Here we Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down.
Here we are, folks.
Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we're gonna light it up tonight. We're gonna light it up tonight. We're gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We're gonna light it up.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that since I'm in town in Boulders, folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa. Sunday, January 14th, 2022. At an unusual time, folks. We haven't broadcast this time for a while, but my apologies for those who might have been looking for a broadcast earlier, but I was, I needed a break there. Need a break. I have been burning the candle both ends and in the middle, and I was pretty knackered, so my apologies. What's going on here? That sunlight is just, there we go. There we go. So I was just knackered, and I had to take a little bit of rest. So I laid down after the Cheetahs broadcast, very disappointing broadcast from earlier. And I went through and I looked at some of the comments on my video evaluating South Africa, Israel, and the International Court of Justice from a couple days ago. It is interesting to see the people who have no substantive arguments, the nonsense that they'll write, So let me say hello to everybody in the chat here. I see a few names I haven't seen much of lately. It's good to see you again on a Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that would make it 9 p.m. in South Africa, Central Africa time. Charles van Onselen, greetings to you. Gus is here. Frederick Erasmus. Hey, Frederick. Miss Pumba's back. Hakan Ayman in from the Netherlands. He's saying, long live the king. I think he's talking about the king of Denmark, as the Queen Margaretha has abdicated and turned the throne over to her son, who took over today. We'll talk about that later in the broadcast. Dylan Combrick is here. Alan Sullivan. Gus is here. And he said, Gus. JP Dreckmeyer. I don't think I've seen JP in a while. Welcome, JP. Helen Rich is back. Hey, Helen. Garrett is here. Gypsy Backpackers. Anna Marie Nell. Hey, and I have no Formula One news today, so hopefully she'll hang around. We'll see if it happens, but hopefully she will hang around. Anyway, what else we got here? There's Picky. Oh my gosh, cool intro. I haven't watched for a long time. Only listen. Yeah, no, it's thank you for the intro. I put some effort into that a few weeks ago at the beginning of the year to try something new. I need to update it so that it has images from all over the world. The problem is I don't have a lot of video from before the time I started doing journalism, just images. So I'll find a way to do it. All right, Dan Hook is here. Good to see you again. And Dylan's back. And who else we got there? Andrello Fick. Good evening. Okay, Andrello Fick. Pleasure to see you. Welcome to the program. Well, folks, we're going to talk about the news, but just a little discussion before we get to the news. It's the 112th anniversary of the forming of the the African National Native Congress, or what the original name was, something like that, back in the day. And that included folks like Sol Plaatje and others who had a noble effort. They wanted to level the playing field, ensure that those who are black in what became South Africa were treated fairly and equally. That was the start. Unfortunately, that organization over years tried for peaceful resolution of their disputes with the governments of the day. And those governments, after 1948, were ruled exclusively by the National Party, which began a system of separate development known as apartheid. Apartheid, or separateness, was meant that separate development, each group would develop in its own fashion. Sadly, unfortunately, that system was infiltrated and affected by racist ideology by members of the National Party who began passing laws that separated people physically, not voluntarily, and led to what became global condemnation for South Africa, a tragedy that unfolded. In 1960, South Africa became a republic in its own right, and then in 1989, things began to change for the public to see. But before that, actually, PW Botha had actually started making some moves before that, about 1986, after the 1985 Soweto riots. So that in 1992, those who were allowed to vote in South Africa, which would be white South Africans of age, who are not criminals, voted overwhelmingly to alter the system and change things. Essentially, it was a vote to end apartheid. 2 years later, 1994, the all-race elections, the first democratic election in South Africa took place, and the African National Congress, using a campaign of fraud supported by the international media, who misled the world, claiming that the ANC were the great liberators of South Africa, choosing Nelson Mandela as their standard bearer. That was an odd choice. Oliver Tambo might have been a better choice, but they went with Nelson Mandela, whose name was unknown to much of the world, were it not for Winnie Mandela, the convicted kidnapper, the convicted thief under the ANC government. Winnie Mandela, who kept her name in the press as a willing Western press in their effort to condemn South Africa, simply distorted history. Now, I'm not attacking Nelson Mandela. Madiba, an incredible figure historically, an absolutely incredible figure. Oh, the wind is really blowing hard against my house. But the point here is that we've been misled in history into believing the African National Congress was a great party of liberation, when in fact the African National Congress, after not being able to make progress with peaceful means, turned to an armed conflict, or at least they tried to. The founder of Umkhonto we Sizwe, the real Umkhonto we Sizwe, was none other than Nelson Mandela. Mandela founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, the spear of the nation, in order to force the racist government to end its racism and turn power over to black South Africans. This started in the 1960s, and it wasn't very long before they were rolled up and arrested and tried. The Rivonia trial in 1962 ended any influence the African National Congress had in South Africa until the 1980s. From 1962 until 1985, 84, 85, the ANC was forgotten about and an unknown factor, an unknown entity that nobody even knew anything about by and large outside South Africa. And even inside South Africa, other groups such as the Pan-African Congress and others were much better known. The Black Sash movement, the Black Consciousness movement founded by Steve Biko and others at universities had nothing to do with the ANC. These things were much better known, much more famous and known to South Africans. Alan Bosak and others were known to folks. The Inkatha Freedom Party, just known simply as Inkatha at the time. All of these groups were much more involved in the liberation struggle. Meanwhile, the African National Congress was invited to Vietnam in 1979. In 1979, they went to Vietnam. They spoke to the Vietnamese, who told them in order to defeat an oppressor, you must play the long game and you must divide the people to ensure that there's no support for the oppressor or for anyone who opposes you. And as a consequence, the ANC began a civil war in South Africa, concentrated in KwaZulu-Natal, in which they murdered thousands of Inkatha supporters. As many as 18,000 Inkatha supporters were brutally murdered, assassinated, many necklaced with tires filled with petrol lit around their neck as they burned horribly to death. This is the history the ANC doesn't want you to remember on their 112th anniversary. This is the history the ANC doesn't want the world to know about. This is the violent history of the African National Congress since the formation of Umkhonto we Sizwe. And now, Jacob Zuma, a babbling idiot, former illiterate president of South Africa, has formed a new party, despite the fact he claims he's not in the party, but he's somehow running the party. Jacob Zuma, the charged with criminality and convicted contempt of court, who doesn't serve time in jail, but apparently somehow magically, mysteriously visits his witch doctor or his traditional healer and gets magical juju, and he is suddenly okay. So if he's okay now, it's time for him to go back and finish serving his sentence. He's no longer terminally ill. But Jacob Zuma involved a new party called Umkhonto we Sizwe, trying to steal the mantle of respectability that the ANC believes it has. This is the ANC imploding today. It is a party with a horrible history since the 1960s. Now, I'm not morally criticizing. I'm not morally judging the ANC. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary to break the bonds that tie one people to another, I get it. We had a revolution. We overthrew a colonial oppressor and became our own country. I'm not arguing the ANC did have a choice. What I'm arguing is they had a choice of how they attacked the rest of South Africa. They learned their lessons from the communist, totalitarian, fascist in Vietnam at the time. And of course, they learned theirs from the Chinese, totalitarian, fascist north. And of course, they learned theirs from the Soviet, totalitarian, fascist. It just all goes around one big ribbon, one big path, folks. It's really sad to see. But the African National Congress, on the 112th anniversary of the founding of this party, over a century ago, a non-racial, non-political movement that was meant, well, not non-political, of course it was political, but non-racial, non-economic system-based. Now, it is a party that claims the mantle of everything. They claim that they are responsible for the Freedom Charter. That's a lie. The African National Congress did not write the Freedom Charter. They were one of many participants in it. It was largely written by, ironically, white South African Jews. Now, how funny is that, South African, as their anti-Semitic behavior in the past week against Israel has been off the charts. The Freedom Charter, which they allude to so often, was largely written by white South African Jews. You gotta love it, folks. You can't make this stuff up. That's just how ignorant people are of history. That's how ignorant people are of history. Gus says pictures are excellent, have professional quality. They may get more mental images than videos. Okay, maybe. Yeah, but you need the occasional video in there. I like the ones where it's Chris reporting from South Africa. I like those. Those are good for the video. All right, so yeah, ANC touched my computer on Thursday. Now it's broken. Anything the ANC touches turns to dust. I've read a couple of op-ed pieces in the Independent Online, not exactly an objective outlet, but an interesting one. I'm going to not do a video about it most likely, but I'll probably write a Substack article regarding the report. And let me just, before I get to the news, I want to cover this a little bit longer since people are here and it's a Sunday. But mixed reactions to the ICJ litigation should not deter South Africa, according to Professor Becky Umgumzulu. Yeah, this guy is talking about South Africa's reputation put to the test. And then he uses language that's very dishonest and misleading. Very dishonest and misleading. And I'm not going to focus on that right now. I will cover that later on. But the other one that's interesting here is an article by Sipo Sepe. It says, the mushrooming of political parties dilutes the African voice, wastes thousands of votes, according to the professor. Now, the argument here, ladies and gentlemen, let me explain what the argument here is. The argument here is that by people not voting for the corrupt kleptocracy known as the African National Congress, you are in fact keeping black people from being able to run the country. Because when he says African, he doesn't mean South Africans. He means the race-inspired misuse of the term African. Black people are not African, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a news flash for you. They're not. No more than I'm a Zanzibarian. No more than I am a European. No more than I am Australasian. Black people, by being black, by virtue of being black, does not make you African. And if we want to make the argument that it makes you of African origin, well, if you believe in evolution, we're all of African origin. So even that doesn't work. It's an insulting misuse of the term. The continent is called Africa. The people who are born there and live there are called Africans. Whether they are black, Bantu and Guni speaking peoples, or they're Neolithic black people from Northeast Africa, or they're Asians in Madagascar and the east coast of Africa, or they're Arabs living in Zanzibar and in other parts across North Africa, or they're whites whose ancestors returned to Africa from Europe, or those who are mixed race as a consequence of the blending and mixing of people from all continents. Regardless of your skin hue, people who are Africans are of all skin colors. But this professor, this gentleman, wants to mislead you with the race-tinged use of African, much like the Associated Press, and even much to my dismay, Dr. Ben Carson misused the adjective black to describe black people. If you're going to capitalize the word black, then you must capitalize that adjective for everyone. It is ridiculous and asinine. Africans are people who live and or were born in Africa. Case closed, regardless of their skin pigmentation. And the misuse of that term is simply meant to racially divide people. And this is the racism in this argument. His argument is basically that South Africa must be run exclusively by blacks. By blacks. Well, that's as racist as saying it should run exclusively by whites. South Africa should be run politically by the most competent people whom the voters choose. That's what should happen, ladies and gentlemen. Those who represent their collective interest best. Well, that is not the African National Congress. Not by a mile. Not by a country mile. Not by a city mile. It is not even remotely the case that the African National Congress represents the interest of any South Africans. The African National Congress represents the interest of one group. One group. Cadres, cadres, members of the African National Congress and their patronage network. That's it. The rest of it is eyewash. It's window dressing. It's meant to hoodwink the rubes, just like the Democrats and the Republicans in name only who run Washington. It's just to hoodwink the rubes. We have a $2 trillion deficit this year on the books. And it'll be beyond that with these supplementals that they're going to come for. $2 trillion. That is larger than the entire U.S. budget was in the year 2000. The U.S. federal budget was not even $2 trillion 23 years ago. And now the deficit alone is larger than the budget was. Are we getting that much more government? No. Are we getting better government? No. Are we getting better benefits? Are we healthier, wealthier, wiser because of that money spending? No. What we are is deeper in debt on the verge of an implosion. South Africa is in the same boat, and we're all rowing in the wrong direction. We're all rowing in the wrong direction. Watching Donald Trump live stream is hazardous because they'll take your channel away. Anyway, so Gypsy Backpacker says yes, and now I rue that decision. Oh, yeah, tell me at 1992. Mkonto Isizwe. Well, the problem, Gypsy, let me be clear before I go to the rest of the comments from people. The problem with that is that the jig was up. The National Party was only in power because it convinced white voters that only it could protect them against the black threat and the red threat, the Swat Khwa and the Khwa, the so-called communist and the black nationalist threat. The image of a black nationalist threat had been greatly weakened by black African governments running successfully. Even Zimbabwe, which most people didn't realize was actually a kleptocracy and a violent, murderous regime. Most people didn't see that. They ignored the events of 1983. However, that was who they were, but saw them as a positive example. Of course, Botswana was a good example, and other places, and successful transition coming for Namibia. The writing was on the wall. The National Party could not continue what they were going to do, what they were doing, without major bloodshed coming down the road. It's as simple as that. So in order to avoid massive bloodshed, they decided to fold up their tent under F.W. de Klerk, who recently passed away. Yeah, so whether you voted to end it or not, it was going to end one way or another. And arguably, if the National Party did anyone a service, it was that decision to end the facade that was the National Party's policies, and they got rid of them. Now, the transition was botched up incredibly by the by the National Party. By the National Party, turning over power to communist and murderous thugs and criminals. And they got away with it because the world had a big holiday. Hey, South Africa is finally free of racial oppression. Unfortunately, racial oppression still exists. Racist laws are now more abundant in South Africa than they ever were under the National Party. The only difference is it's just not as obvious because it's the minority being persecuted. And there is nothing more insidious than a government persecuting a minority. Nothing more serious than that. Nothing more insidious or vile. Minorities are at a disadvantage. Minorities are smaller in number. Minorities can easily be overwhelmed, wiped out in pogroms. And this has been the problem with what's happened to the Jews in Eastern Europe for centuries. They became the easy targets of the majority because they were different. Like white folks who speak off our cons in South Africa who are different. Yeah, this is the worst, and the world sits by and watches it. Willie Mandela, chief protagonist. Black Sash? Yep. Mkonto sees way weekend jokers trying to play soldier. Well, the vast majority of them, yes. And Garrett points out that the necklacing was petrol and diesel. True. That's why it's stuck together like jelly. Yep. And then what else we got here? Fleshin's here, in from Oxford. Mike is in from Eastern Pennsylvania. How's it going? And Charles says, I never had a chance to comment on previous podcast how many people actually support the ANC government attempt to prosecute Israel. I don't know the numbers, but there are large crowds of idiots who show up who don't know the rule of law, who don't know. Look, I'm not calling people idiots because they're concerned about the welfare of civilians being killed. No. That doesn't make you an idiot. That makes you compassionate, a human being. But that compassion wasn't there for the Jews who were horrifically executed, murdered, gang raped, breasts cut off, babies put in ovens, or for the constant firing of rockets into Israel over the past 15 years. There was no empathy from these people for then. So they're hypocrites. They're hypocrites. If you are going to be angry about the civilian deaths in Israel's retaliation for Hamas's war, then you must be equally as outraged at the civilians and the rockets fired by Hamas for the past 15 years. Simple as that. Any possible good name we had before ANC, Gypsy? Okay. Even Maggie Thatcher warned that the ANC took over, they would destroy the country. Yep. Andrea Fix says, we're living the black rule for almost 30 years, and it's effed up our country. Yep, it has. Because it's not black rule, it's communist rule. See, that's where you need to divorce yourself from things, folks. And I need to make this very clear now, because they have created a situation in South Africa, in Europe, and in America now, where they have begun to successfully convince people that the problem is that they. And in this case, we're talking about minorities in America who are overrepresented, wildly overrepresented in government, in sports, in Hollywood, and now even in our commercials and television programs, wildly overrepresented, which is creating resentment by the majority of the population. In South Africa, minority South Africans who are frustrated at what's happening in the country are now being led down a path to blame on people who have different skin color. Let's avoid that altogether, folks. This is commies. These are leftist scumbags. They are kleptocratic thieves. They have no affinity for black. They have no affinity for white. Look at Julius Malema, partying it up, yucking it up, all his events, white people around him, rich white people. That's where he hangs out. He doesn't hang out in shebeens. Julius Malema's probably never been to a shebeen since he was a 6-year-old boy. He hangs out with rich white people. This isn't a black and white issue, ladies and gentlemen, in South Africa, in America. It's a commie and liberty-loving fight. Those who love liberty, conservatives, centrists, libertarians, and traditional Democrats in America, not the Democratic Party of today. That's who the fight is. Your fight isn't against your neighbor who's black or the person down the street in the township who's black. Your fight is against the communists who've undermined our country, the socialists, the idiots who think that taking from one person is legitimate and giving it to someone else. Those are thieves. They're thieves. If you don't earn it, you don't deserve it. It's as simple as that. If you've been unfairly prevented from earning it, then we must correct that. Not by giving you advantage into perpetuity, but by fixing the wrongs that you've befallen you. That's the bottom line there. What do you think? Okay, there seems to be considerable debate over the out of Africa theory, even the mainstream science journals. Light Rain, look, I'm not going to get into an evolution and the creation of man by God debate about the origin of the species. That's a science debate. That's not today's topic. Yeah, there's always debate. There's always debate. So, I mean, yeah, there's arguments on both sides. But my point here is that, and I get your point, even for those who believe in evolution, there's an argument that people appeared in multiple places at once. It just doesn't seem reasonable that multiple places at once. It seems like, how could people just magically, with this incredibly complicated biology, appear in the same fashion in multiple locations around the planet simultaneously, or even years apart? It just doesn't pass muster. It seems beyond impossible for that to happen. It just, I mean, think about it. You have a gallbladder. You have tonsils. You have archaic parts of our body that we no longer use. We walk upright. It's the cardiovascular system, cholesterol. Endorphins. All of this stuff. The chemistry of our brain. It's incredibly complicated. Is life. So anyway, I don't want to get into that argument. Michael Holmes is back. Welcome, Michael. What do you think of P.W. Botha's increase in spending in the military? It seemed he was very corrupt and was complicit in the same corruption as Mueller. Well, Michael, I'm going to address Michael's question here because it's a good question. What do I think of P.W.'s Botha's increase in spending? Well, I think it was absolutely necessary for P.W. Botha. You see, he was the head of a security state. P.W. Botha was the head of a security state. The South African government existed by chasing the black and red threats that it said were endangering South Africa. It was the bulwark against communism. In order to do that, they had to stop it at every angle. The South Africans developed this frontline state mentality, and they created a cordon sanitaire, a clean sanitary border to prevent communism from coming towards them. That's why they retained possession of Southwest Africa. That's why when the MPLA threatened stability and freedom in the region, they fought against the MPLA and with UNITA. Although UNITA under Savimbi, he was a bit of an arrogant ass, but for years we were all hoodwinked by Savimbi. Didn't know the horrors that he committed in the camps where his people were. And so, yes, P.W. Botha had to spend that money in order to persist the state that he was ahead of, to accomplish the mission that he felt was his mission to achieve. So that's the question. Now, my answer doesn't convey endorsement or condemnation. It simply explains why. Yes, I believe that he had to increase it. And you say it seemed he was very corrupt and was complicit in the same corruption as Mulder. What corruption? Spending money in the military isn't in itself corrupt. You're going to have to detail the corruption. And where's your impression that he seemed corrupt? P.W. Botha started the end of apartheid, secretly meeting with Nelson Mandela. Kurtz is back, and yet the plucked chickens still vote for ANC. Watching 2024 KFC T-shirt, nothing will change. 30% generation. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Kurtz says IDF has the right to retaliate. Bottom line, correct. Self-defense is an international norm. Michael says, but can Israel even justify its bombing of Gaza? Yes, it can. Of course it can. Why can't it justify its bombing of Gaza? That's where Hamas is at. Hamas is attacking Israel. Hamas butchered and slaughtered 1,200 people and kidnapped, and they still have 200 people. I mean, on that basis alone, the bombing is justified. The fact that they're holding hostage 200 people. Why? Just turn the people over. So, yes, of course they can justify bombing Gaza. Why can't they? Doesn't even know which deaths are civilians and which are Hamas combatants. Well, yes, it does. Because with many of the Hamas fighters, they actually have DNA because they've been previously arrested and political pressure forced them to release them. So they have extensive intelligence on who these people are. As long as their bodies aren't blown apart and obliterated, they're able to identify. That's how they're able to identify one of the senior leaders was killed early on because they had the guy's DNA and fingerprints. Ukraine and Russia has not seen the level of indiscriminate. You are so wrong. You're so wrong. First off, they're not indiscriminate. It just appears that way because the media is misleading you. Number one. Number two, Ukraine and Russia have seen indiscriminate civilian deaths. We've also seen pogroms taking place in this conflict. You're cherry picking and misrepresenting the facts. You're misrepresenting the facts and distorting that, Michael. That's simply not true. You want to believe that, but it's not true. It's not true. Just because the media don't cover it doesn't mean it isn't happening. JP says, my nephew's traveling to Detroit tonight for a few courses in automotive. He's not sure he's ready for you. Minus 16 degrees. Well, if that's Fahrenheit, yeah, but it's nice here. It's 31, just below freezing here. Andrea Fix says, thank you, Chris. I actually never looked at it from that angle. What are we talking about? Sorry, thank you. Please, you got to tell me which one we're talking about here. ANC, help me out there, Andrea. Which did you not see? Which angle? No, ANC do not love South Africa. They love privilege, which is what they want. Frederick Erasmus says, once a terrorist organization, always a terrorist organization. Okay. The Conservative Party should never have walked out of Parliament after the referendum. When that happened is when de Klerk put both under the bus. I don't know about that, Dan. I think they kind of worked, together. Both to start it and de Klerk finished it. Ultimately, why does it matter in real terms where we originated from? Exactly, Flesh. And what matters more important is getting rid of Joe Biden and the communists in Washington, D.C., and the America-hating shrews that are populating our Congress, people who despise America and its freedom, yet profit from it, running their mouths with their freedom of speech while they seek to silence others. By the way, folks, I'm going to, on one of my broadcasts, read some excerpts from a book by Dr. Ben Carson. Now, the book is interesting. It's a bit thin. I'm thinking, well, I could have written this book. It's with much more detail and kept it more interesting. But Dr. Carson writes the book almost as if he's talking to sophomores in high school. That's my impression of it. I mean, he's reading a history that I suppose many Americans don't know, but one that I'm very familiar with about race relations and the history of America. He glosses over some things, doesn't mention them fully, but he has some great comments about how people are not inherently racist. Of course, being a pediatric neurosurgeon, he would know better than most. Talks about the plasticity of the brain when we're children. And yeah, it's brilliant stuff. So he's written some really nice things in there, and I'm going to share them with you and talk to you about how isn't it ironic that the political left, who claims to be freedom-loving and liberty-loving, which they're not, they are simply trying to silence people, just like they've done against others. The reason for Jim Crow, the reason that blacks were prevented from voting in much of the South and much of the North throughout the late 19th century and early part of the 20th century wasn't for any other reason than to exclude them and to silence them. That's what it's all about. No different than cancel culture today, folks. Cancel culture is all about silencing people that you cannot argue with, whom you cannot hold a candle to, people whom you're afraid of because they're either brighter, wealthier, apply themselves better, or simply you have no argument because you're just based on hatred. Cancel culture is racism in a different form. Racism not necessarily directed against people because of their race, although oftentimes it is. It is simply racism directed against views and opinions you don't agree with. And in fact, when it goes beyond simply writing nasty things on Twitter or on social media like Facebook, when it goes beyond that to actual active campaigns to undermine and troll and attack people, their lives, doxy people, to harm people, it becomes nothing more than race and hate-inspired garbage, which is what it is. It absolutely is. Why were all the Karens screaming at people when they know nothing about epidemiology? I lay odds with you 99.999999999999% of the idiots running around screaming, "Ew, where's your mask? Ew, you haven't got jabbed." Know nothing about epidemiology and even less about proper hygiene. I guarantee you, they know nothing about it whatsoever. And I'm telling both sides of the argument. The people entrench themselves, refuse to believe anything because it came from the government. The people on the left who push anything. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, and I did the video. It's on one of my channels. I think it's on the original channel. I did the video with excerpt, or I might have taken it down because of my fear over YouTube censorship at this point, but when I got my other channel back. But I took the videos of all these Hollywood celebrities, all these Democratic politicians and rhinos. Well, not most of the Republicans are quiet. In the summer of 2020, when Operation Warp Speed was well underway, and Donald Trump took all the safety measures off, protocols were removed, do what you got to do, gave them legal indemnification, which in itself is questionable from a legal standpoint, that they can't be sued over that, how he can do that as chief executive. Whole interesting story there. But took it all off to develop a vaccine very quickly, right, to get the jab. All of these idiots in August and September and October, "I'm not taking the jab. I'll never take it. It's just Donald Trump trying to get wealthy. He's making money off our misery." Yada, 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 yada. Remember that? Remember that? Then the jab came out in late October, just before the election. Remember that? Yeah, around that time frame. They were quiet. After the election, still kind of quiet about the jab. Basically, everybody was arguing about the choosing of 2020 from November to January. Then the fake cooked up insurrection was being argued about for the rest of January, and the fraudulent impeachment of Donald Trump into February. But then come March, if you haven't got the jab, you're a criminal. The same people who said they'd never take it, they'd leave America, it's undemocratic, the government can't make us do this, are the very people running around and pointing fingers at you. You destroyed the world. Yeah, that's what they were doing. Yes, I know that's a Greta Thunberg reference. Okay, who else we got here? You cannot compare Michael. Oh, neither can. Scott Ritter sounds like he hates America. Oh, hey, there you go. Somebody else. Thank you, Gypsy Backpackers. Scott Ritter does hate America. Scott Ritter is not a reliable source. And Scott Ritter is, well, I'm not going to say the next word because that get me in trouble. But Scott Ritter has been running his mouth and anti-America since the Gulf War. Remember that? The second Gulf War, the Iraq War. Yeah, I know. No, he gets all kinds of attention, but he doesn't deserve it. Compare civilian deaths of the year long Ukraine versus... Oh, okay, Michael, compare the civilian deaths in Dresden in one night. In one night, Michael, the U.S. and U.K. Air Force killed 30,000 German civilians. Look, you're just being willfully ignorant of history. You can't compare conflicts like that. There's nowhere in the Ukraine side, the urban centers, where populations are as dense as that. And these fights aren't being done there. They're being done in small towns in the east. That's where most of this fighting is taking place. So there aren't the density of people there that could be killed like you find in Gaza. But there were in Dresden, and 30,000 of the Germans were murdered in horrific incendiary bombs in Dresden. In a single night, 30,000 civilians. So what's your point, Michael? That's no more germane than the argument you're making. Come on, man. You got to make better arguments than that. What made South Africa not calling the Russian war of Ukraine invasion? Their friendship with their commie friends who gave them succor during the liberation struggle. The Soviet Union was a major benefactor, along with China, for the ANC, giving it money and supplying it in Zambia and in other locations where it was hosted around Africa in exile, giving them training. Remember the Dr. Beetroot, the lunatic alcoholic who said that, you eat beetroot and that'll cure HIV, that cure AIDS. HIV is not the source of it. Remember that? Under the Becky administration, the dumbest health minister in the history of humankind. She got her medical degree in the Soviet Union. They have long, deep roots to the Soviet Union. That's their friends. They also have this idiotic animosity towards America, which has done nothing but help South Africa, pouring diplomatic power, money, resources, antiretrovirals into South Africa to help South Africans, but they're self-loathing of people who are self-made. That's part of the problem. See, the Soviets stole, murdered, butchered, and acquired. America built itself. And they just don't like that. So the reason they didn't condemn that was because they didn't want to offend their friends in Russia, even though virtually no trade occurs with Russia. It's a rounding error. Rounding error. Over 60% of all trade for South Africa comes from Europe and the U.S., but the largest trade partner is China, with about 30% of South Africa's trade. And they didn't want to offend Russia. I don't know why. It's ridiculous. Scott Ritter. What does Scott Ritter say? Oh, there you go. Okay, got it. Okay. You cannot compare. Okay. I like the Vivek so far. What do you think of him, Chris? Although I'm hearing a few strange allegations where his funding comes from. I don't really care for where his funding comes from, as long as it doesn't wind up being something he's beholden to. Vivek Ramaswamy is pretty much a self-made guy. He's pretty smart. Says most of the right things. Has solid conservative positions. But he's not going to be president. Doesn't have the kind of support. There's either tacit bigotry that will keep him from becoming president, I believe, and the same with Nikki Haley. They're both Indian. Nikki Haley may look more white to people, although Indians are white. But I'm just trying to give the argument here that's out there. I don't think that he will become president, although I think he's a fine candidate. He's better than DeSantis or Nikki Haley by a country mile. Theodorus is laughing about January 6th. I'm not sure why. What's that about? Yes, Dresden was egregious. Dresden was bombed flat. Yep. What's your take on the attempted coup in Burkina Faso and the overall situation in hell? What, is there another attempted coup in Burkina Faso while I was asleep for the past couple hours? I missed that. Yeah, he could wind up being Secretary of Commerce or something like that, or IT czar, something like that. Hey, Crypto Noob is here. The Mnet movie, tonight on Mnet. Anaconda, as Ronaldo loves to do. He always does that. It's funny. Yeah, so what's my take on the Sahel? The Sahel is a basket case, and it's a basket case because of poor governance there. Now, what the left will try to do, and I've seen this from these idiots who run around, make a career for themselves, denigrate foreign policy, particularly the U.S. and Americans at that, they'll try to claim that the reason that the Sahel's a mess is because of colonization, because of globalization, because of climate change. No, it's not a result of that. Climate change didn't force the Nigerians to have sex endlessly to go from 4.5 million to 28 million people in 50 years. No one forced them to do that. They did that to themselves. If Niger was still a country of 5 to 6 million people, there'd be plenty of resources for that country. What with their uranium wealth and other wealth that's being discovered there. And it wasn't colonization, climate change, or neocolonialism that forced people in the Sahel belt to have poor agricultural practices and destroy the Sahel and turning it into a desert. As we've seen from some Sahelians, including a gentleman who just passed away at the age of 78, who restored the Sahel with the right trees that held on to water and restored the soil and held it in place. It can be restored and taken back to where it was. Yep. You can overcome climate change by using adaptive plants and by using proper methods. No-till soiling in America helped reduce erosion immensely, just as one example. But the Sahel is a basket case. Why? Because of corrupt people from weak systems. What much of Africa lacks is what America once had, but has fallen apart because of the communist infiltration of the very things that made America strong. And I'm going to talk about it in just a second. We've got a super chat coming in. Wow, $10 from Usina. Wow, Usina, good to see you again. Thank you for the super, yes, overgrazing. And I'll tell you that story in just a moment. A super chat from Usina, which hasn't come up on my screen yet, but people are seeing it in the chat. £10. Thank you for that. Wow. I keep forgetting to beg for super chats, which have become, again, the primary source of revenue for the channel because the advertising is dried up because YouTube is hiding my channel again. But I guess I'll just go ahead and get started here. All right, so back in the 1960s, it's Ansa Duplessis. Hey, Ansa's here. Welcome, Ansa. Good evening. I've been here, just had nothing to add. Well, thanks for jumping in. Acid Zill's here. Load shedding at 10 coming up. Okay, that's shortly, not too far away. But in the 1960s, the U.S. Peace Corps and USAID were in the Sahel, and they thought they had a great idea. Oh, there you go. There you go. £10 from Messina. Thank you so much for that. They thought they had a great idea. You see, this is their mindset back then, 50, 60 years ago. These poor goat and sheep herders living in the Sahel, they have it so difficult. They have to constantly migrate from place to place. They go, they pick up, they move all the time. They're nomadic. They're not sedentary. And we can improve their life by digging wells. We'll dig wells, and then they'll get the water from the artesian wells, come up, and they'll be able to stay in one place one time. Then their kids can go to proper schools. They can have an improved life. We can get immunizations for them, yada, yada, yada. Oh, we are the great saviors. We're here to save these people who've lived here for thousands of years in harmony with the environment around them, not overpopulating their environment, not denuding their environment, but living in harmony with it. So what do? They dig wells. What happens? The herders, instead of migrating from one place to another because they need a water source, stay in one spot. And what happens? What does sheep do? Sheep eat grass to the surface, and it gets cooked by the baking sun. Instead of having stalks that come up and shield the roots from the brutal sun and help collect the water and the dew in the morning and divert it down to the roots, the grass is eaten to the ground and stepped on and killed and dies. And in concentric circles around these wells gets further and further away, and they denude. And of course, when the grass can no longer hold the soil, the winds blow it, and next thing you know, desertification comes along. And it becomes a self-perpetuating, self-fulfilling, non-virtuous cycle of ecological degradation and destruction, prompted and promoted by none other than human beings who upset the balance of nature. So what do we have today? Niger, 28 million people, country full of smugglers, criminals, terrorists, and people having 48 children. You think that's made up? Not made up, folks. When I was stationed in Niger at the embassy, my driver was one of 48 children. His father had multiple wives. Yep. No wonder that country's in the crap. And of course, you bring into this mix where people are frustrated and don't have anything, and they see others with things. Oftentimes they don't. They want things. And when someone comes and promises them something by adhering to their own beliefs, they're easily transformed into something that they're not. Yep. And so this hell's this disaster. There's only one way to clean it up, and that is to exterminate the terrorist organizations and for someone to impose governance. But it's not going to happen. It'll remain a basket case the rest of our lives. Yep. Good evening, Kevin Nicklin. Good to see you again. How are the folks? Overgrazing, correct. Of the 80 murder a day and 150 rapes, how many of those are committed by whites? Very small number. But then whites make up a very small percentage of the population. But of the embezzlement that takes place in South Africa from corporations, how much of that is done by whites? A higher percentage, because they have more access to it than other folks. Look, being white or being black doesn't make you necessarily criminal intended. It doesn't give you criminal intention. That's an individual decision. So that's an important distinction we got to remember here too. The reason why there are so many blacks who commit crimes in South Africa is because there are so many blacks. In America, the majority of the crimes are committed by the majority of the population. However, violent crimes, a disproportionate number of those are committed by minorities. Black Americans are wildly overrepresented in violent crimes and crimes against property as opposed to whites. But that has a lot more to do with cultural norms. And there may be some cultural norms taking place in South Africa as they've perverted society since the ANC took over. What's the latest Hunter Biden impeachment and walkout of the inquiry? He is there's no impeachment for Hunter Biden. He's not a government official. You're talking about the contempt of Congress. That hearing is taking place this coming week in contempt of Congress, and he will be found in contempt. They have the votes, but nothing will happen to him. As far as goats eat everything as well, that's true, but the sheep eat it right to the ground. Yeah, Obama-Harris fried old Germans, stifled in the evening and again in the morning, unacceptable. You got a statue built. Yep. Like Zim, perfect example of useless clowns in power. Now the population starving. But yes, the something OCHA fault as usual. Okay. Charles said that load shedding and the power came back on 840. They must have made a mistake and turned it back on. Yep. They've gone from a pastoral society to a modern give-me society without any in between. Exactly right, Fleshin, and that's what happened. And since they've septupled, is that the right word? Septupled? You got sextupled. Can you say septupled for 7 times? 7 times the size of the population that was in Niger. You're not going to resolve that. The only way to resolve that is if the population goes back down to a manageable figure of 8 to 10 million. I mean, look, ladies and gentlemen, Niger in 1960 had 4.5 million people. It's in 2024, it's got 28 million people. There's no more rainfall. There's no more grassland. There's no more mineral wealth. There's no more anything. Nothing. The same amount of rainfall, The same amount of water, the same number of water sources is there that was there in 1960. Oh, I'm having a good day for the sun, and we're over 5 still at this hour. That's cool beans. 17.5 kilowatts after it was cloudy all morning. Wow. I don't know what that means, white devil. All right, so we haven't done the news. We've been chatting away here for an hour. Wow, and 69 people are here. You must be enjoying this other news. I don't have a lot of news stories, but I have some. Let's go ahead and zip through some of these very quickly, and I'll discuss things as we go along. The ANC's Ramaphosa targets decisive ANC win in South African elections. He's whistling past the cemetery. At the ANC party at Nelspruit in Umbombela Stadium, we see people waving a Palestinian flag. I'm not sure what that obese person has to do with Palestine, living in luxury there in South Africa. South African President Ramaphosa said yesterday that his ANC party would be seeking a decisive victory. He's looking for a second term. When they look at us and say the ANC is finished, when they look at us and say we're going to get less than 50%, that is said by people who don't know us, who don't know the ANC. Oh, brother, we know you. We know the ANC. You are just whistling past the cemetery. The only way you get above 50% is if you steal an election. That's the bottom line. Well, speaking of stealing from one group of people and giving to another, the student aid program is going to have 3.8 billion rand for the missing middle, says the communist blade Nsimande. Nsimande says they're ready to roll out phase 1 of the missing middle student loan scheme. The government has 3.8 billion towards the scheme. Where did the 3.8 billion come from? From the just energy transition? From the African Development Bank? It certainly didn't come from the taxes of South Africa. This country is in the red. Eskom cancels stage 4 load shedding, but sticks with stage 3. They've announced that stage 3 load shedding will persist until Thursday. And so the media, right in line with them, says stage 4 is canceled. Yeah, well, stage 3 still stays all the way through Thursday, and that's the new development. Meanwhile, 4 people are missing from Durban after flash floods in Durban and in KwaZulu-Natal's north coast. Emergency workers have been working throughout the last night after heavy rain caused flash floods in KZN, which led to a trail of destruction in certain parts of northern Durban and the north coast. By Sunday morning, 4 people were reported missing, while one emergency service vehicle said they responded to 157 calls for help, mostly in the Verulam, Phoenix, and Tongaat areas of northern Durban. Wow. Bad news. More bad weather for South Africans. 5 members of the African National Congress killed in a motor vehicle accident en route to that celebration at Nelspruit. 5 ANC members killed in bus crash up in Limpopo on their way to Umbombela Stadium. 2 vehicles crashed, 2 buses, and 5 people died. Tragedy. Unfortunate for them. Well, folks, the Pretoria Zoo, which has been around for a century and a quarter, is being mismanaged and poorly run, according to those who go to the Pretoria Zoo. Managers of Pretoria Zoo say it's ready for business, but not everyone is convinced. In recent weeks, the National Zoological Gardens in Pretoria have received backlash from visitors disappointed by its poor state. Yep, they're getting accused of it. The South African National Biodiversity Institute, or SANBI, held a briefing saying, we're doing the best we can. We've had infrastructure upgrades. But here's the thing. SANBI is another state-owned enterprise. It's another failed state-owned enterprise. Well, the Cheetahs disappointed earlier today. I got up for that and called that game, a game they should have won, but they choked it away very badly. Lots of mistakes, turnovers, unnecessary penalties, poor play. And England's Robson shows class. Yep. Former England halfback Dan Robson, standout performer of the day, delivered 2 moments of inspiration to allow Poe to take control. And not only did the Cheetahs screw this up, but because of stupid play, they gave up a penalty, and that turned things around. They lost the line out. That turned things around. And they wound up giving up a try they shouldn't have given up, and they wound up losing. And they lost 2 points out of this. They could have had a bonus point for a 4th try, which they didn't get twice late in the game. They were within 10 meters of scoring, and they threw the ball away unnecessarily. And that would have closed the gap, and that would give them a 4th try and a bonus point. It also would have given the lead. And then even with that, they give another try. By giving another try and not scoring that try, they wound up losing by 14 points or 13 points. And as a consequence, didn't get a losing bonus point or the try bonus point, both of which would have helped them out. But instead, they stay at 9 on the log. It's very unfortunate, disappointing. Cheetahs really let us down. Now, the last 2 South African sides, the Lions yesterday lost, and today the Cheetahs lost. I don't want to be churlish, but John Dobson. Dobby, the coach of the Storm, is upset that his team doesn't put other teams away, and that's agreed. Yep. While the 31-24 victory came with a bonus point, it was the losing point which the visitors earned that irked Dobson and his coaching staff, as their intention was to shut them out so they would be out of the running by the time they played their final pool against La Rochelle. Yep. So a superb performance by the Stormers, wasted as they gave up points late in the game and let this team back into it. So where are the best countries in the world to live? Well, folks, lots of different views on this, and you can ask anybody. But according to one survey, it's Switzerland once again. And that's a beautiful photograph right there, isn't it? Switzerland retained its position as the best country in the world, according to the 2023 Best Countries Report from U.S. News & World Report and the Wharton School of Business in Pennsylvania. That's, of course, the Wharton School is where Liz McGill was president at University of Pennsylvania. 17,000 participants to conceive how nations are perceived on a global scale. So, Switzerland, number one, ranked number 6 for quality of life, number 1, open for business, number 6 for entrepreneurship. I'm not sure I'd rank them that high for the third one. Canada, second. I disagree with that entirely. Sweden is third. Australia, fourth. I totally disagree with that. It's a fascist state. United States, fifth. Japan, 6th, Germany, 7th, New Zealand, 8th, UK, 9, and Netherlands, 10. I think the UK is far too highly rated here, and I think that Australia is way too highly rated here. Excuse me, folks, I've got a phone call. I've got to take this very quickly. Give me just a second here. Sorry about that, folks. That was quick. I just took care of that. Interesting. So, anyway. So South Africa, that was the point of telling that story. I got lost here. South Africa ranks 46 out of 87 of those countries. 46th out of 87 of those countries. Wow. That's way down there. So, 46 out of 87. Well, things are also looking bad in Kinshasa, where floods a couple days ago really caused some chaos. Everything's destroyed. Kinshasa in tumult after Congo River burst its banks. Burst river banks are causing turmoil in the DRC's capital of Kinshasa, with dark and foul-smelling water pouring into homes across working-class neighborhoods. The impoverished metropolis of 15 million people sits on the river, the second largest in Africa after the Nile, and it was swollen to near record levels over the past several weeks. Wow. Oof. The river is backing up. In the district of Pompage, a bridge over one small river was completely submerged, creating a stinking and stagnant pool in the middle of a residential district. My goodness, terrible stuff there. Flooding taking place. Well, the DRC needs more transparency, says the United States, United Kingdom, and Belgium as they congratulate Tshisekedi. In August last year, the U.S. began the construction of a new embassy in Kinshasa, which it said could be worth $3.2 billion. Israeli defense minister walks out of a meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. Apparently some disagreement. Storms out of the meeting. Tensions boiled over yesterday evening during a meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and key aides, with Defense Minister Yoav Gallant storming out of the room amid deepening disagreements. The clash between Netanyahu and Gallant came as Israel marked the 100th day of its war against Hamas. Things are going bad. Lebanon attack kills 2 Israelis. 2 civilians were killed in northern Israel on Sunday after an anti-tank missile fired from Lebanon hit their home in a town near the border. So, Michael Holmes, are you still here? Michael, why are 2 Israeli civilians dying in their homes because someone in Lebanon is firing anti-tank missiles at their home? You're concerned about civilian deaths. What about that? What's going on there? Gabriel says you're in the right place. Sure, Switzerland's a lovely place, but it's not the best place in the world to live. It's pretty good, but not the best place. A bit too crowded, a bit too expensive, and yeah. So, voters in Taiwan rebuff China. The ruling party gets a 3rd term. Lai won 40% of the vote. Taiwanese voters swept the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's presidential candidate Lai Chi-teng to power on Saturday, strongly rejecting Chinese pressure to spurn him. His party, which champions Taiwan's separate identity and rejects China's territorial claims, was seeking a third successive 4-year term, unprecedented under Taiwan's current electoral system. He only won 40% of the vote in the first past-the-post system, unlike the current president, who was reelected by a landslide 4 years ago with more than 50% of the vote. But he still won the vote. Well, we're talking about decarbonization, but the world is headed for record consumption of natural gas. Yeah. Nearly every major region is boosting investments in the infrastructure needed to increase the use of natural gas in power generation. More than $720 billion is spent on gas pipelines under construction or planned, and an additional $190 billion is to be put on facilities to handle liquefied natural gas, according to the Global Energy Monitor. Wow. The investment sums involved have been committed to projects that are underway or planned in the near future, reveal the powerful momentum that remains in traditional fossil fuel industries, even as clean energy supplies are deployed at an accelerating rate. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So, wow. No carbon. Yeah, we're spending more money on carbon. Massive Russian airstrikes hit the Ukraine. And where's Michael at? Where's Michael at? There's a residence right there. That's a residential building. Oh, we're not targeting indiscriminately civilians. What's this? Look at all those privately owned vehicles. That's a hotel, actually. Sorry, hotel. Why would a hotel be hit? That's a privately owned hotel. All those cars. Russia launched a wave of missiles in Ukraine early Saturday morning, adding that it was able to shoot down a handful, Ukraine said. In all, Russia launched 37 missiles and 3 drones. It should be noted that more than 20 of the listed weapons were not included in the number of the down that did not reach their targets as a result of active countermeasures by electronic warfare. Wow. So there you go. Where's Michael? Michael, you still here? You're talking about there's no one's firing indiscriminately at civilians. There you go right there. And hopefully we've still got Hakan is here because we've got this story that Hakan was talking about at the beginning 1 hour ago. Denmark's King Frederick X takes the throne as his mother steps aside. Walking out with a host of military medals, none of which I'm sure he's earned. King Frederick, don't recall ever seeing him in any combat operations, yet he's got all those medals on his chest. Denmark's King Frederick X ascended the throne on Sunday, succeeding his mother, Queen Margrethe II, who formally abdicated after 52 years as monarch. With big crowds gathered, Margrethe, 83, stunned the nation on New Year's Eve when she announced that she planned to become the first Danish monarch in almost 900 years to voluntarily relinquish the throne. The succession was formalized the moment she signed the declaration of her abdication during a meeting of the Council of State at Parliament. Denmark is one of the oldest monarchies in the world and does not have a coronation. The meeting was attended by government representatives, Margrethe, Frederick, his Austrian-born wife Mary, who is now queen, and their oldest son Christian, 18, who is new heir to the throne. About an hour after the signing, Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen was due to proclaim the new king on the balcony. And there she is. That's in close to freezing temperatures. Tens of thousands of people from all over Denmark converged in the capital to witness events, and a sign of the huge popularity of the monarchy is enjoying in the nation of nearly 6 million people. We've come here today because this is history being made in front of our eyes. We just have to be here, said Soren Christian Bisgaard, a pilot. He was drinking champagne with 3 friends, sitting in the camping chairs in front of Parliament. Very fond of the royal family. Yep, royal power couple. There you go. So, the Danish royal family has taken charge. House of Glucksberg. House of Glucksberg. Well, Trump is rolling over his opponents in Iowa, so Nikki Haley's turning her attention to New Hampshire, hoping to get something there. 72% of those who vote Republican are satisfied with Trump as the nominee. But Joe Biden sinks to new lows, absolute new lows. His performance is hitting a record low. Interesting enough, this is if you are voting for your party, Republican or Democrat, are you satisfied with the party's nominee if it's Donald Trump? 72% of Republicans, 61% for DeSantis, 48% of Republicans would be satisfied with Nikki Haley, and 44% with Ramaswamy. Just 57% of Democrats would be satisfied if Joe Biden was their nominee. Wow. Crazy stuff right there, folks. And here you go. We're looking for presidential job approval. Biden job approval. 33% of Americans approve of Joe Biden's presidency. 58 disapprove. Trump retrospective job approval. Looking back, people 41% say they approve of Trump. 53% say they disapprove. What's the point of any royal family in the 21st century, menage a trois, other than it brings esprit and unity to a nation? 2 Navy SEALs missing from an operation in the Red Sea after shipboarding mission, or off the the African coast, of Somalia. A search and rescue operation was underway Saturday after 2 Navy SEALs fell into the ocean while attempting to board a ship off the coast of Somalia. The incident occurred in the Gulf of Aden, not in the Red Sea. The operators were preparing to board in rough seas when one of them slipped from a ladder. They spoke in a condition of anonymity to discuss the ongoing operation. They have not been identified. It was not immediately clear what vessel they were attempting to board or why. U.S. Central Command, which coordinates military activities in the region, said the missing service members were Navy sailors and declined to provide further information until personal recovery operation is complete. Well, that's not good. 2 Navy SEALs lost at sea. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin remains in the hospital, the man with a secretive condition he failed to disclose to his boss. In a statement, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin remains in the hospital. In a statement, it said Mr. Austin has resumed some of his duties and is in contact with his senior staff. There was no specific date for his release from hospital. He was admitted after intensive care unit on January 1st. Austin, still in the hospital on the 14th of January. Been there since New Year's Day. In Iowa, Donald Trump is rolling away with the caucus. We'll see what the results are. Former President Trump looks to be on the verge of historic victory in the Iowa caucus. The final poll from the Iowa pollster Ann Seltzer has Trump at 48%, followed by Nikki Haley at 20%. The largest margin ever has been in double digits just twice, and I think 12 or 13% is the biggest margin ever in an Iowa caucus. If Trump wins by 28 points, that's a shellacking that's never been seen in the Iowa caucus in the history of caucus. So we'll see. Maryland's former governor, the Rhino, Republican name only, non-conservative Larry Hogan, who milked his medical condition, endorses Nikki Haley, saying she presents the best possible candidate against Biden. Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan endorsed Nikki Haley. A fierce opponent to frontrunner Donald Trump and supporter of former Republican candidate New Jersey Governor Chris Christie said Miss Haley gives the party the best chance of beating President Biden in the general election. Unfortunately, that's not true. You're killing yourself. Well, the largest dam removal in the history of the United States taking place as the Klamath River Dam is removed, reducing our hydroelectric capacity in a time we're supposed to be getting hydropower and alternative energy. The largest dam removal in U.S. history entered a critical phase this week with the lowering of dammed reserves on the Klamath River. The gate on a 16-foot wide bypass tunnel at the base of Iron Gate Dam, the lowest of those slated to be removed, was opened from a crack to 36 inches. Amy Cordalis stood at the dawn chill to witness the first big surge as the gate widened. She's an attorney and York tribe member who has played a key role in advocating for dam removal. As water poured through the tunnel, she could hear boulders rolling and tumbling. The water turned dark chocolate milk as decades of pent-up sediment surged through. This is historic and life-changing. And it means that the York people have a future. It means the river has a future. The salmon have a future. What future do you have? Because a dam is removed, Miss Cordalis. 173 feet high, the 740-foot crest Iron Gate is an earth embankment with a skinny, many-fingered reservoir behind it. The lowering or drawdown of the Iron Gate and 2 reservoirs on the Klamath River will make way for the removal of 3 remaining hydroelectric dams that are part of the Lower Klamath Project in Northern California and Southern Oregon. For decades, these barriers have blocked salmon, steelhead, and Pacific lamprey from accessing habitat above them and contributed to poor water quality below. The Klamath River was once the 3rd largest salmon producer on the West Coast, but in time, since the dams were constructed, the runs have dwindled to a fraction of the historic abundance. When tribal activists first started calling for the removal of the 4 Klamath dams in the 1990s, people thought they were crazy. We've never really considered any other alternative for removing dams, and so it was the fight that we're committed to, and we knew we had to win. It's an intergenerational struggle. A massive die-off of Chinook salmon in 2002 that catalyzed increased activism around getting the dams removed. An estimated 34,000 to 78,000 fish died. The loss of these fish just doesn't mean the loss of fun summer fishing. Yeah, well, all gone in one day. Well, the thing is that 38,000, millions of salmon make that trip, and 38,000 is what caused you to lose your minds? Watchdog Group says that Harvard's in a lot of trouble, folks. Watchdog demands probe into Harvard that could put hundreds of millions in Fed funding in jeopardy. Watchdog Group is demanding an accreditation institution probe Harvard University over its handling of plagiarism allegations against its former president, Claudine Gay, a move that could determine if the Ivy League school continues to receive hundreds of millions in federal funding, the Post has learned. Yep. Honeymooners star and the actress who played Trixie has passed away, Joyce Randolph, at the age of 99. She played Ed Norton's wife, Trixie. Joyce Randolph, a veteran stage and television actress whose role as the savvy Trixie Norton on The Honeymooners provided the perfect foil to her dim-witted husband, has died of natural causes at her home on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, according to her son, Randolph Charles. She was the last surviving main character of the beloved comedy of television's golden age in the 1950s. The Honeymooners was an affectionate look at Brooklyn tenement life based on part and star Jackie Gleason's childhood. Gleason played the blustering bus driver Ralph Cramden. Audrey Meadows was his wisecracking, strong-willed wife Alice. Art Carney, the cheerful sewer worker Ed Norton, and Alice and Trixie often found themselves commiserating over their husbands' various follies and mishaps. Whether unknowingly marketing dog food as a popular snack or trying in vain to resist a rent hike or freezing in the winter as their heat is shut off. Wow. So there you go. Joyce Randolph passes away at the age of 99. 99, folks. Wow. So there you have it. There's the news for today. A belated newscast. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate that. Don't run off. Harvard is a nuclear woke hotspot. Yep. Harvard's in trouble. Yep. The race is to win the Republican Party nomination, not the presidency. Lamprey is a bad, inedible fish. Yes, I don't know why they want lampreys back. They latch onto things. Yep. They hook on to sharks and other things. As always, he just killed it in Iowa. Yep. Anybody would give the Republican Party the best chance of beating Biden. It's true. The world don't really need inbreeding royal families anymore. Well, they're not inbred. He married an Austrian, the Swedish royal family. He married a half-German Brazilian. Have you ever met a person who worked with Lloyd Austin? No, I haven't, Menage a Trois. I've never met him, never worked with him. Nope. I was, when he rose to fame, although rose to fame publicly, not within the military, rose to fame, it was his time in Iraq as a 2-star general that got him attention, and which a lot of people criticize him for, and I was not in Iraq at the time. So, yeah, no, I don't know the guy other than his public persona. So I assume he's a good guy. I mean, anyone that takes the oath to support and defend the Constitution, puts on the uniform, should be a good person, man or woman. But his actions as Secretary of Defense have been atrocious. His wokeism, his nonsense. But his former chief of staff, or chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was just as bad. General Milley and his nonsense. I want to understand white rage. What? White rage? You want to understand it? What are you talking about? The Steps will beat Biden. Yeah, the Steps have beaten Biden on multiple occasions, especially the ramp going up to Air Force One. Wow. State DEPs started with small dams, huggers, bless the bog turtles. Huh? Ekaterina. Oh, wow. Really? That's news. Donzova. Wow. Let's take a look at that. She's been arrested. Let's see. Oh, come on. Come on. Back to where I was. News. Come on. Stupid browser. Come on. There we go. Barred from running. We know that. There's nothing. So there's no, it must be on Twitter or something like that. It's not in the news yet. It hasn't made the news outlets. Huh. Even Doug McGregor sounding anti-American. Really? What is Doug McGregor saying that's anti-American? I haven't listened to him. I don't really listen to Doug McGregor. He's from another time. What he is saying that's anti-American? Please tell me. I'm curious. I'm not disputing. I'm just curious. Yep. It is interesting. So I said earlier that I looked at the comments on that video that I produced, the live stream where I did the conversation the other night about, was it Friday night? Or I think it was Friday night, when I talked about Israel, South Africa, and the International Court of Justice. That one's got over 2,000 views, and YouTube is playing some serious games with the data on that. When I look at that, at the content, it tells me that thing has only had, let me see, where is it at here? My last broadcast. It says it's 153 views. Well, that was when it was live, so that's accurate. 153 views when it was live, because late at night. But that video has now gotten 2,000 plus views, but they're slowing it down now. And then this is where they kill me here. They say within the first hour to have 1,500. Didn't have 1,500 an hour after it was released. That's crazy. Also tell me I got 1 subscriber from it, but I didn't produce any other content, and no other content was viewed for the most part in the time since I produced that, and I gained 35 subscribers, so they're telling me just 1. They're just nonsense. But that video I did the other night. So YouTube is always playing games. Just been said through a blogger of Inside Russia. Okay, well, we'll see if that's the case. The guy that sells things on the side of the road and say they're allowed to do that legally. You mean just hawking on the side of the road? I don't know what the laws are for hawking in South Africa. In Africa in general, no one follows any law if there's an anti-hawking law. No, I don't think you're allowed to do that. I don't think you're allowed to do it, but no one ever presses those people. You're talking about the ones who sell those silly stickers for like automotive makes and, you know, I don't know, umbrellas and things like that on the side of the road, just junk that comes from China. Yeah, I don't know what the deal was. There was a point I was trying to make that was related to that, and I forget what it was. Sorry about that. It's escaped me now. It has escaped me now. Yep. ANC's sad 112th birthday. That's what we got going here. 112th birthday. Anyway, there was something I was trying to get across here. I don't recall what it was, folks. Anyway. And anti-Israel, he says you will lose a war against Yemen because other Arab nations. What? War because I don't know, it's the Arab nations' weapons. What do you mean, gypsy backpackers? Was he asked a question about whether the U.S. should engage in a conflict in Yemen? We shouldn't be in Yemen. That's not a good idea. That's not anti-American. I want to sell things to them yesterday. I don't get that. I went to sell things to them yesterday. 3 items stolen from my car. I don't understand. People are going on about Israel bombing humanitarian zone in this conflict, but neglect to mention Hamas launched. No, I don't neglect to mention. That's what I'm talking about. That's why they're legitimate targets. As I've said all along, for these people who are, daytime commentators and keyboard warriors who don't know what they're talking about. Oh, I now remember what I'm going to talk about. I'll get back in a second. When a belligerent uses protected sites like historical sites, churches, mosques, clinics, schools, as a military area, it becomes a legitimate target. You're not allowed to just, you can't bomb our mosque and then use the mosque to attack people or plan operation. You can't do that. Now I remember what I was talking about. So the comment was that I said was that on that video, that's why I went to that video, I looked at the comments, and there was one person with a particularly profane username, and I deleted that person's comment. I don't usually delete comments, but the username was profane. And someone called them out, but I just deleted the person's comment, so your response is gone. So that wasn't targeting you, it was targeting the profane username. Now, someone else said something stupid about the video, and they said the comments just don't make a whole lot of sense. See if I can find here real quick. Let me see. Let's see if I can find it. There's one here who complains. It was that one, so. Where is it at? I'm trying to find it now. Let's see it. Maybe the guy took it away. They tend to delete that once you respond to them. And they one of these guys, is just funny what he said to me. Okay, trying to find it. Trying to find this one here. I think this guy must have deleted his comment. It was a very rude comment. But anyway, I'm trying to find it here to read it to you guys. This was on that broadcast. And it looks like it's gone. Oh, here it is. It's a made-up user. User JV5Z Bravo 6TL6I. Yeah. He said this. He said, delusion of the highest order. So this is where the drones congregate on YouTube. The day Colonel Wyatt brings on anyone to counter his soliloquies, I don't know what he's trying to say. I think it's pushing whatever narratives while giving himself props at the same time. When that day comes, I'll take him somewhat seriously. Otherwise, keep preaching to your choir, Colonel. I just thought I'd check in on your church. Well, you self-delusional, hate-wanking lunatic and rude piece of crap, whoever you are. I've had a lot of people on this channel. It's my program, and I'll have on who I want or who wants to come on the program. I've given people forum here to express their views, and oftentimes in contradicting mine. I've also offered historical corrections for people who get facts wrong. I've had a wide variety of people on my program, more than virtually any other content creator, and I say that in full confidence. I've had close to 1,000 guests on this program over the past 4 years. Yeah, probably about 800 guests on this program past 4 years from all over the world, from New Zealand, from the Netherlands, from South Africa, from Australia, from the US, from Canada, from Europe, all over the place. And I'll put that up against anything. You don't like what I have to say, you don't have to watch it. It's not drones congregating. It's a pathetic hate wanker who shows up and doesn't like the content. So instead of being a man or a woman, whichever you are, and just offering counterpoints, You simply attack someone. See, this is the cancel culture clowns that I'm talking about who have nothing in their argument. So his argument is that basically that it's not even written in English that someone can understand. Oh, he responded. Okay, now I'm going to have to apologize because he responded. He said, well, Mr. Wyatt, I meant no disrespect. Hate is for the weak-minded. All I said is that you have yet to face any opposition to your arguments, and you have to have them hold weight because you never have anyone in the computer narrative with a counter-narrative. Let me read the rest of this. He says, as a military man in this media space, where are your battle credentials? And why is it easy to debunk what you say? I don't mean to ramble, but until your narratives or arguments have been battle tested, I'm just opinions. I mean, even your reply says all the chest pains. Okay, so, well, you have responded in a cogent way. I'll do the same. Okay. Sorry, folks. Yep. I said, well, not that now that you've responded. Boy, my typos are really bad. My typing is really gone. Now that you've responded. Boy, I cannot type for beans. I used to be a really good typist. Responded. Now that you've responded in a cogent manner, which is what I'm saying, I'll do the same. You obviously have not watched my content over the past 4 years and are trolling. Suggest a guess. Okay, there you go. All right. Went to sell my old items to guys on the road. As I stopped, about 15 of them rushed to my car, opened all doors, and grabbed things from my car. I literally went to sell them. They stole from me. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, R1. They took 2 bags, 2 chairs, and a microwave. This is how they keep themselves in poverty. Obviously, won't go back. According to my knowledge, not allowed to be on national roads, not even hitchhike. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the law, Hester. I'm not going to claim I am. I'm just saying in Africa that's tolerated everywhere. It's crazy. Yeah. So, no, my response to him was call an ambulance. You're having chest pains. Please share your analysis or foot sec. So he doesn't share analysis. He says that he meant no disrespect. Well, in fact, it was disrespect. It was disrespect to my users or my viewers and disrespectful to me. Because I called that's a picture. I changed the slide because I need a slide. I made one really quickly with some photographs called Colonel's Battle Brief. And he says, until my attitudes are battle tested, or there's also ignores the fact that I appear on multiple programs and with people who don't agree with me. Kanthan Pillay and I don't agree on many things, and we've appeared together, and he's had his argument. I've had my counter argument. I've been at Big Daddy Liberty many times with people whose arguments were completely different, and I've had counter arguments. This is nonsense. This is, look, I don't know who you are, user, and now you're trying to be polite. You claim you're being polite. And this is how I got myself in trouble a couple years ago by being naive and tolerating trolling. So I'm going to do a little bit here, but I know better now than to let this continue on forever. But you just don't know what you're talking about here. First off, it's my program, and you can watch it. You don't have to watch it. That is your prerogative. No one's twisting your arm to be here. God knows YouTube does its best to hide the content, so I'm surprised you found it at all. Maybe somebody shared it with you. If you don't like what I say, then tell me what you don't like what I say. You notice this was about South Africa, Israel, in the International Criminal or the Court of Justice. Not a single comment about that. Not a single comment about that. He just says, I don't face any opposition to my arguments. Dude, are you high? I've spent 4 decades in uniform around the world. Every day, my arguments are facing opposition. Every day, I have to compromise. I have to negotiate. Every day for my entire adult life. The fact that you don't see it here is because you choose not to see it. You're willfully ignorant of it. Willfully ignorant of it. We've had plenty of people in this program disagree. Look, we don't create programs for confusion and argument. This isn't a gotcha show. This is an informative show. If you don't like the facts, you can go look them up. Again, not one point mentioned here to refute what I said. No evidence questioned. No counter argument. Just ad hominem attacks. As a military man, where are your battle credentials? Where are my battle credentials? It's a title for a program. So what are you claiming? I'm not a colonel? You're claiming I didn't serve in the military for 36 years? You're claiming I didn't live in multiple countries overseas, serving 23 years overseas? Yeah, is that what you're claiming? You're claiming I've never been in combat? You're just comical, man. It's just the evidence is irrefutable. I'd see. Where are your battle credentials? And why is it easy to debunk what you say? Well, if it's so easy to debunk what I say, user JV5, whatever, change it to a real username. If it's so easy to debunk what I say, why didn't you use your opportunity to post on the platform and debunk what I said? He doesn't debunk anything. Why is it so easy? Why is it easy to debunk what you say? So debunk it. There's nothing, not once here do you debunk what I say. You attack my viewers and you attack me with ad hominem attacks, calling it a cult and calling it drones congregating YouTube. And then and I tell you that you need to call an ambulance because obviously I have chest pains. My point is that this is not for you, so you should go elsewhere. And I said, and then I offered him an opportunity to share your analysis or footsec. And then he comes back and says, where are your battle credentials? Well, where is your rebuttal? There is no rebuttal. You've got no rebuttal. It's pathetic. Sad. This is what the trolls do. Anyway, enough of that. If he comes back again, we'll see the response. But it's just hilarious. This must be one of those refugees or sycophants from down under. You're faster than a Chicago typewriter. RSA case the ICJ is a farce with no standing whatsoever. That's what I said, and I'm correct. That guy was smoking something, Colonel. Just ignore it. Yeah, exactly. John says, good to see you. I hope you feel better. I'm still not great. I took a break. Hey, Dog Breaker. Oh my goodness. It's been donkey years. I'm glad to see you're still around. Daybreaker. Menage Qua says, sorry, there are trolls questioning your service. Thank you for your service and volunteering your time to inform guys like myself. Menage Qua, it's okay. People can question whatever they want. This is social media is a dirty space. It's a caustic environment where people just misbehave all the time. It happens. They steal your content. They misrepresent. They falsely report. They tell. Again, if you have a counter argument, now he doesn't say, hey, listen, I can argue against your position. Why don't you invite me on? He doesn't do that. I would have given a way to contact me and said, hey, come on, let's chat. And then if he's a real person, maybe we do it. Yeah, of course you can't reason with him, R1. That's how people are. Don't lower your level of intelligence with some people. Exactly. Anyway, no, but it's important to point this out. This is a frequent sort of thing. And you deal with it in life in so many ways. I'm also dealing with a veteran service organization where people who've been sacked, not by me, but by the people they work for their incompetence or for undermining the organization, then run off and try to report to higher headquarters and to other organizations and make false claims about things. And then, anyway. Yep. Anyway, my ex was a traffic officer. Okay, Hester, cool. Thanks for sharing that. Not that you had an ex, but that it was a traffic officer, and so you're familiar with the law. Yeah, no, I'm sure. It's the problem with the hawkers is they present a danger, as R1 just talked about. He was robbed by people on the street who aren't supposed to be on the street. The public conveyance is for automobiles and wagons and things like that, not for pedestrians. That's why they create pedestrian crosswalks in civilized countries. Now, a lot of us have jaywalked and crossed, but not to stay in the roadway, but to cross at a more convenient spot. That's a very different thing than people who are lingering or staying in the roadway, causing hazards. Yeah, I know that's one of the things that irritated me the most about driving over to Nicklin is those guys selling crap on the road. Very annoying. Yeah, and I think most of them know that. Most of them know now that people have been robbed like R1 was, and they don't even bother to stop and offer attention for these other folks. So yeah. You don't even roll your window down anymore because you can get robbed or carjacked at those places. So people don't even deal with them. So it's not even a viable thing. So it's a shame that people behave in such a fashion, but that's the reality. So how could the police drive past these guys? Because they don't enforce the law. It's not worth their time. What's going to come of it? They don't even prosecute murderers in South Africa. Not most of them. Wonder why it bothers people what other people like to listen to. We can decide. Exactly. Thank you, Fleshin. Thank you very much. Quite frankly, then it would be the same argument I make. Well, I'm angry that you're a Christian. You're in church on a Sunday. You're a Jew. You're in synagogue on Saturday. You're a Muslim. You're at mosque on Friday. That's your prerogative. That's your faith. That's your belief. That's what you enjoy. Well, I'm angry that you read the New York Times. No, I feel sad for you to read New York Times, but I read the New York Times too, so I feel a little sad for myself, but I read it so I can bring you the news. Ooh, 20.4 kilowatt hours, and we got about a half hour of good sunlight left. Let's see if I can make it to 21 or 22. Anyway, that's good news. Yeah, that's just silly. Why do people have to impose on others? And that's just the stuff. So if you guys can hang on for just a second, I want to go grab that Ben Carson book. Give me a few seconds here. Don't run off. I'm going to come right back. I want to read a couple of things to you because we got an audience here right now. Hang on. So here we go. Ben Carson, this is Created Equal is his book. And I just want to read a few things of this in here. So I love his, in the beginning when he starts out in the 40s, he says, this book's dedicated to the 1% of the American populace who volunteer for military service and to the first responders, both of whom protect us internationally and domestically every single day. Well, thank you for that, Ben Carson. I've had this book for a couple of years and I hadn't had a chance to get around to reading it. So let me just go through and find a few things here that he talks about that I think are really interesting here. He said when he was a kid, he was a black kid in a white school, mostly a white school, and he said he had all A's as he entered his last class, which was his band class. And he was confident he was going to get an A in band since he was an excellent instrumentalist. Instead, the turkey, he called him a turkey, band teacher gave him a C in order to ruin his report card and his chances of receiving an award. To his great chagrin, the band course didn't count, and he still received the award. But the teachers chastised the other white kids for allowing a black kid from a very disadvantaged background to be number one, which that's not cool. We must all come to the realization that people are not racist when they are born, that racism is a very bad thing, and that it is within our power to drastically alter the conditions that produce it. Yep. And he references Vladimir Lenin. He said, Lenin said, give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. Agreed. Yep. Anyway, so there's some more here. Everyone is an individual, and that their character is their most important defining feature. That character is defined not by external physical features, but by the accumulation of life and environmental experiences, as well as their belief system. 100% in agreement with Ben Carson. Yep. He's got some other things to say here. Yep. He said, cancel culture and Jim Crow racism have much in common. The aim of both is to disenfranchise and control the targeted group. That's exactly right. Unfortunately, many adults in today's American society seem obsessed with promoting their views and suppressing the views of those who disagree with them. This has resulted in the rise of cancel culture, which is the antithesis of the concept of liberty. Yep. 100%. When your self-image is good, there's no need to put someone else down. But the problem is that, as was mentioned here, you guys are telling me don't lower yourself to that guy's level. The problem is that hatred, however, is an emotion that is incompatible with logic and common sense. 100%. 100%. Yep. When people get to know each other, minor physical distinctions quickly fade into the background. This is one of the reasons why hardcore racists wanted so much to maintain segregation throughout the entire society. He says now, 50 plus years later, after making tremendous progress, we're trying to turn back the hands of the clock and make race the central focus of so many lives. In today's America, where many factions exist that suppress open conversation and stimulate further division, excuse me. Yep. And he says, nothing like a common interest to bring warring factions together, which is something I heard Neil DeBeer say, not in those words, but to that effect, talking about the ANC and the multi-party charter. And, basically Neil said the same thing that Dr. Ben Carson is saying. There is nothing like a common cause to bring us together. In the case of South Africa, the Springboks. In the case of Nigeria, soccer. And suddenly everybody's Nigerian. Suddenly everybody's South African. They all get along. Saps telling him try to deal with hawkers except to shake them down. It usually falls in the domain of Metro Police, so usually only respond if a complaint is laid. Yep. I think Chris is getting beef jerky. No, I'm not getting beef jerky. I was getting the book. And here's the book by Ben Carson. So a book I bought a couple years ago. It was on the shelf. I took it down last night and started reading it. a person I respect immensely, a pediatric brain surgeon, neurosurgeon, crazy stuff. All right, so what else here? Looking so good there, Colonel, with your haircut. Thank you for that. Why don't the trolls get their own channel and broadcast their own hate wanking? They'll probably get more viewers. Dogbreaker says, I see the clock shows 3:30. 1600 is beer o'clock, or at least mixed with Coca-Cola. What does Chris call that mix? Schussbier. Oh, Dogbreaker, been around for a long time, but has been scarce of late. Schussbier, yeah. Yep, Schussbier, but it's not spelled that way. I used to work for municipal services. Yep. Yeah, and Charles did until recently. Laylu likes listening to Ben Carson. Yeah, and segregation always happens. People will choose to sit. Well, self-segregation is one thing. And see, that's the thing I never got. When I was in college as a freshman back in 1982, and people were complaining, there wasn't much in the way of complaints about racism. We were limiting that in public society for the most part. It was just mostly stuff in private. But at university, I always got a kick out of you had some of the black nationalists who were talking about, segregation. There was no segregation. It had been officially ended years before. And how, people are discriminating, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, why is it that there are black guys in the fraternities, but there are black fraternities that have no white guys? Why are they excluded from the black fraternities and black sororities? And why are there black fraternities and black sororities? Isn't that segregation? Self-segregation. I'm not criticizing it. That's your prerogative. If you want to isolate yourself, if you want to live around people who are like you because you share values, there's nothing wrong with that. It's how you treat others that matters. That's the bottom line. So your point is straight. Helen was born in 1982. Don't tell me that, Helen. You're just a young pup. People selling on the street in towns have to get a permit to do so, but they don't. Yeah, but they're also not allowed to stand in the street and block traffic. The crew got upset that I drink red wine out of a crystal tumbler. I have to smile as the wind takes their glass. Yeah. Oh, he's busy on Twitter. Okay. Sometimes get her. Yeah. Okay. Progressives have tried to disregard and cancel Ben Carson because associated with President Trump and his Christian ideals. Yeah. Well, but that's even before that. They tried to do that to Ben Carson because he's black and he's articulate. He's a conservative, and those are things they can't take. They can't take a black, articulate conservative. Hence the rage against the Supreme Court and Clarence Thomas. Can't have that. Can't have that. It is ironic, the hypocrisy of the leftists in attacking people of color because they don't agree with them and try to cancel them, rather than simply tolerate them and listen to their viewpoints or simply ignore their viewpoints. If you don't like what they have to say, ignore it. But there's no reason to attack Ben Carson. Ben Carson is a brilliant man, an incredibly accomplished man who's achieved much in his life, grew up in poverty like I did, yet overcame that poverty and became quite something. And I think Ben Carson would make an excellent vice presidential pick for Donald Trump. Yep, I was surprised he wasn't the vice presidential pick last time that they picked Mike Pence out of nowhere. I understood the reasoning why they went with Pence. They wanted evangelical vote, and he's a rock rib evangelical from the Midwest. Two things that were in his favor. But Ben Carson is also a devout Christian. So who ran for governor? Governor of what, Hendo? Oh, yeah, that was Earl Weber, whom we had on the program, and then I couldn't get him again after that. Yep. See, the problem I have with guests is that some of these folks only want to go on programs where they're going to get millions of views. I'm not going to get you millions of views. Sorry for that. And I can't get millions of views. We are shadow banned on this platform, and they don't promote our content, so it's hard to get that. So, but if you want to get something on the record and be spoken, then you can always use the content later on with my permission. Then you can do that. So, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So I've asked the gentleman to respond. Anyway. But yeah. So anyway. So also, what's this? I get a lot of interaction on X. There are more people there who you can disagree with. Blocking does harm discourse a bit. Yeah, I don't get much action on Twitter. I've only got 1,300 followers despite having a channel for almost 20 years. And most of that's come recently. Yeah, I have 13. Yep, and I just don't get much traction on Twitter, so not my favorite. It's great for breaking news, but that's about it. It's a very toxic environment. I still have the cough. Yeah, I'm trying. I'm taking methylprednisone now, which is a steroid, and I've got Flonase for my nasal passages, which are inflamed. but it doesn't seem to be helping. So Hester was in Standard 1 that year. Winnie Mandela walking, what's Bryanston? Must be the best drive. Shopping. I'm not sure we go with it. Huh. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to read your chat there. Some of you guys are writing stuff I just can't follow. It gets very confusing. Sedgefield, the way Sedgefield writes, I wonder if because Sedgefield's first language is Afrikaans, because I'm always having a hard time understanding a lot of what Sedgefield types. I don't quite follow. I try, but don't quite follow. 84 likes. Hey, folks, thanks for that. I do appreciate that. I'd say push the like button, but, we say that all the time, so what's the point? But Ben Carson's 100% correct. People aren't born racist. They become racist, they become bigots as a product of their environment. What's ironic is, I suppose if you've been oppressed or if you've been marginalized or if you grew up in poverty, you don't look at things the same way, although a lot of people in those conditions do, but I don't look at people that way. And I'm only guessing it's because of my experiences, having been the underdog, having been the one on the outside so often growing up, that I didn't like it, and I want to treat people fair. Oh yeah, Larry Elder, the the black face of white supremacy. The LA Times. How can a newspaper be taken seriously when it runs a headline so racist like that? It's unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. But they called him the white face or the black face of white supremacy. That's just, oh my goodness. I wonder if my filling came out here. Huh, no, it's up there. Okay. Anyway. Huh, feels like I might have had a filling come out. That's scary. I have to get a picture in there. Take a look. We'll try this. Use the camera here. Gonna put the glasses on here. You guys gonna do some dental work with me here? Did a filling come out? Something's not right here. Oh, I can't see. It's too small. I have to get a magnifying glass or something. Look at that. Wow. Hope I didn't. Something doesn't feel right there. Anyway. No, I'm not in pain. It's where a root canal was. But they'll get rotten if the filling came out. It'll get rotten. It just doesn't feel right. Feels like there's a hole that shouldn't be there. That's damn racist. My best friend's growing up. Harpy sport. Cook fish, net the river, illegal but openly done. Well, I wouldn't eat anything at a Harpy sport. Man, that water is filthy. Ain't gonna happen. That ain't going to happen, man. Oof. Helen has an X account, but I don't bother posting anything or reading anything from there. I didn't for years. I mean, I have over 10,000, about 10,000 posts on there. But I mean, that all came in a few, blurbs, few quick years where I was doing stuff. Later in my career in the Army, I started using it. I was exercising in the wintertime at the small gym, which is laid across from where our offices were. It was just quick to run over. It only took me about 5 minutes to get there and then, stretch out in 10 minutes. And I was on it's above ground. It's above a basketball court. And it's a ramped track up there, which is just the length of the basketball court. And I would do laps around that, running or walking. And when I was walking, I would have my phone out and I would just respond to Twitter when I didn't have reading glasses on a few years ago. So I'd respond to Twitter and I'd take stories about Africa and post comments about them. But that's when I discovered that Twitter was such a toxic place, and that's why I didn't really mess with it much after that. Being Welsh and from a colonized country, I live and like living in the country of my oppressors. Well, it's like the rivers and streams in Durban. Yeah, well, there you go. There you go. Well, Sunday night, folks, it's fun you guys joining me tonight, and I apologize for having to take that phone call earlier. That was kind of important. I'm going to have to deal with that when I get off the phone. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but I don't know. We'll see. We will see. Anyway, I've got to make that phone call here when I get offline. But right now, things are looking pretty good for my solar power at 21.5 hours and still 4.29 kilowatt. Oh, dropped to 4.22 kilowatt hours per hour generating. So, wow, probably get over 22. I got about 15 minutes, half an hour of sun. Use your tongue. Lecker stream against this pond. No wonder the wild geese prefer to swim in the pool here. What? What? The wild geese. Oh, remember that movie, The Wild Geese? That was a pretty good one. I mean, the cinematography wasn't great. The story wasn't particularly great, but it was still fun to watch. That was an enjoyable movie there. Yeah, I think the actor that played in that role has died recently. The guy who played the black president. Probably too many beers here. Could be. Penguin Whisperer. What is this? Paulie's the Penguin Whisperer. Why, is he hanging out down there in Simonstown where the penguins are? Could be. I don't know. Is that where he's hanging out? Anyway, folks, yeah, you guys are awesome. It's great to have you chat with me on a Sunday. I wasn't going to do this stream today. I was pretty knackered after all the rugby yesterday, plus whatever's going on with me that's not healing. So anyway, Yep. Roger Moore, Richard Harris. Yeah, that's the one. Roger Moore, Richard Harris. Yeah, that was in that. Yep. Something like that. Okay. And Gabriel has just proven that he really is in Switzerland with the CHF. Now, does anybody know why Switzerland's currency has the CHF on it? Why is it like SWI or SWZ? Well, because Latin for Switzerland was a different word. In fact, the Swiss license plates have CH on them. Yep. That's the old Latin word for it, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Wow. So look at that, man. A super chat coming in from Switzerland. Super chat coming from Switzerland. I didn't know you were still here, Gabriel. Well, let me go get some Swiss news real quick then. I'm feeling guilty here. Let me find out Swiss news here. We don't have Lori in, or we do some Finnish news. Confederation Helvetica. There you go. That's it, Gabriel. Confederation Helvetica. Oh, Helvetic. Excuse me. Helvetic. Yep. World Economic Forum to kick off in Davos. Great. Davos gets another one. Pro-Palestinian activists bash the country's neutrality during protests. So Switzerland gets attacked for its neutrality. Oh, my goodness. And there is the super chat from Gabriel. Thank you for that, man. Wow. Pretty cool. Wow. Helvetica. So Zelensky's headed to Switzerland to shore up international support 58 minutes ago. Oh, we got all kinds of Swiss news here. Swiss police looking for skiers and snowboarders responsible for triggering an avalanche. Let's do 4 stories very quickly on Switzerland since Gabriel gave a super chat. Here we go. Whoops, that's not the right one. I've got to do this one here. Where's it at? Where's it at? Come. Use that screen. Okay. World Economic Forum to kick off in Davos with global elites. Carbon neutral, January 15th in Davos. Concludes on the 19th, take place at the World Economic Forum's headquarters in Davos. Europe is experiencing the warmest January days ever recorded. Communities around the world are grappling with extreme weather events supercharged by the climate crisis. This says Clara Maria Schenk, campaigner for environmental group Greenpeace. Ja, ich glaube, die Frau ist ja nicht da. Die hat manche Probleme im Kopf und das ist ja Wahnsinn. Das ist eine verrückte Frau und ich habe etwas gegenüber zu sagen. Yeah, she's crazy. Anyway, so Davos is coming up, and they're talking about carbon again, the World Economic Forum, as they fly for, and here's the perfect image of the World Economic Forum in Davos, right? There you go. The general view. Look at that. It's the Zurich airport as people arrive in their private jets for their annual meeting. That was from last year. Private jets, the World Economic Forum. Yes. Switzerland's pro-Palestinian activists bash with the country's neutrality during a new protest. On the Global Day of Action, protests in Switzerland call for permanent ceasefire, accusing the country of being complicit in genocide despite its declared neutrality. More than 15,000 pro-Palestinian agitators have taken to the streets of Basel on Saturday to hold their first national protest in support of Gazans since several German-speaking cantons introduced a ban on such actions. Now look at that. Oh, global warming. And look at the rooftop covered in snow in Basel. Yep. And people in the UK freezing, yet we're talking about warming temperatures. The Global Day of Action for Gaza, the newly founded Federation Swiss Palestine, FSP, called on people from all across Switzerland to come together to protest their country's government complicity in the deaths of at least 22,000 Palestinians. So how is Switzerland complicit? And how many of these people are actually Swiss? And how many of them are agitators who shouldn't be in the country? Send them packing. Yep. Okay, now this one I can't get to. The story disappeared. Elkhart. I can't get to that one because I don't have a subscription. And here's another one. They want us to have a subscription to it. But Snowbrains, that's what this one's called. I don't even know this site. It says Swiss police looking for skiers or snowboarders responsible for triggering an avalanche. Back on January 9th, the afternoon avalanche occurred and slid into the Pisol ski area in Bad Ragaz, Switzerland. Extensive search issued, but thankfully nobody was found buried or injured. The police are still seeking to identify who was responsible for setting off the slide. It's triggered outside of the resort's official ski slope, but the run out carried into the resort and went unreported. Wow. Well, there you go. So there's a little bit of Swiss news. There's a little bit of Swiss news. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Seems like every climate meeting every month. Exactly. Warmest January. Not for Hendo and for Flesh. Yeah, not here either, folks. It's 30 degrees here right now. The temperature's gone down. It's dropped below freezing here. Typical January temperatures right now. And we had snow a few days ago. First snow in a year. What accomplishments have come out of Davos? Fleecing the world out of common sense, misleading the world, enriching the global elites. Lots of things have come out of Davos. Emiratia Dam used to eat fish there in the 70s. And there's a super chat from George Steinberg. George gave it a 70 rands, but we've already done South African news, brother. My handle. This is a genuine, not Swiss, but German Alps Edelweiss cowbell. Look at that. The Edelweiss on there. Edelweiss. Anyway, that's a genuine. I purchased that in Garmisch. Yep. Sure is a real one. As opposed to this cheesy little Christmas package one for my Santa outfit. This one here. That's just a cheesy little bell. That's a nice quality, high quality cowbell right there. That's the sound you hear when cows are walking around. Yep. I remember the first time I was ever in Garmisch in 1984. Pat McMullen and I went there on Labor Day weekend in September. 4-day weekend, we traveled all over. We drove down in his Volvo station wagon with our army sleeping bags and our clothes. We went to Munich first. We went to the Hofbräuhaus, had dinner there, drove out towards Dachau, stayed overnight, woke up and realized we were directly opposite of where the concentration camp is. We visited the concentration camp, went back into Munich, went to the Olympic Village, visited the Olympic Village. I bought myself a Bayern München hoodie, which didn't have hoodies. They were just sweatshirts. Sweatshirt didn't have hoodies back then. And we went from there. We drove down to Garmisch. We stayed overnight in Garmisch. But when we went into Garmisch, one of my first experiences in Garmisch-Partenkirchen was we had to stop because they were bringing cows down. This was September, down from the fields in the mountains, down through town. And all these cows wearing these bells and this clinging, clanging as they all walked along. It was a very memorable event, an impression that sticks in my mind to this day. I might not be able to remember Ernest Hemingway's name. Which the other day I had to search in my brain for Ernest Hemingway. I couldn't think of his name, the old man in the sea, Ernest Hemingway. But I certainly remember that experience in Garmisch-Partenkirchen with those cowbells, and that's why I eventually bought myself one of these, even though it was pricey, because I loved it. That is a very indelible memory from my experience in Germany as a young man back in 1984. 1984. I wasn't even 20 years of age when that happened. 19. Cuckoo clock. Well, Gabriel, I've got a cuckoo clock, but that's not really, it's not a Swiss thing. Cuckoo clocks are not from Switzerland, they're from Germany, although the Swiss people think they come from Switzerland. I have a cuckoo clock. I also, my stepfather wanted one when I returned from Germany in 1987. So when I went back to the States, everything I owned fit in my duffel bag that I took back with me. I didn't have any suitcases, and I did have some household goods stuff back, so a few things went back that way, but everything I owned pretty much came in that duffel bag. And so that duffel bag, he wanted a clock and asked for it last minute, and I took it, and the box was like this big, and I stuck that in my duffel bag and ate up almost a quarter of my duffel bag, and I brought it back, and I gave it to my stepfather and my mother, and they had it for years, but they broke it, and they smoked around it and ruined it. Shame. So I bought myself a cuckoo clock many years later, much more expensive, much smaller one. I have a cuckoo clock. It's just, I don't know where I've got it at right now, but I do have a cuckoo clock. Yeah, that Germany doesn't exist anymore. You're correct, Hendo. That Germany is gone. It's now occupied by millions of criminal alien invaders who have no business in Germany or are not contributing to German society, but are bifurcating and dividing it and demanding that people support Palestine and give money to Liberia and do this for Ethiopia and all this other stuff. Sounds like the sheep coming down from mountains. Exactly, that's right. Flesh and exact same sort of thing. You're exactly right. Have a cowbell for my gate. Everyone can hear it. Yep. Hofbräuhaus. Yeah, the Hofbräuhaus is incredible. I've been there again when I was in Germany before I left, when I was reassigned, coming from Ethiopia back to the War College back in 2015. I went to the Hofbräuhaus a couple of times in Munich. It was not that far. Took a trip down there. Yeah, when I also went to the German Museum down there where they have an ME262 Messerschmitt in the museum, plus a whole bunch of other stuff to see the museum, yeah, and walk around downtown in Munich. Yep. What's your take on the French-German farmer strike over the last 2 weeks? I didn't know the French were striking, Frederick. That's news to me. The Germans, mainstream media is silent. Yes, okay, a couple things about it. Number one, the mainstream media are silent about it, and that is troubling, and that also raises questions. A lot of people asked me to cover it for the past 2 weeks. I only covered it the past couple of days because I couldn't find reliable legacy media sources all I could get was like, tweets and third-party websites I never heard of, and I couldn't prove the veracity or provenance of the information. So also I've seen a lot of these tweets talking about the German farmer strike. We're using images from the Dutch farmer strikes about the ammonia that took place last year and from previous German strikes a few years ago. So I was reticent to report on it. See, that's another thing. These little hate wankers come along. They don't even mention that. I'm very reticent to cover things just to cover them. I need to have some sort of evidence, not just, make things up. So anyway, don't give me credit for that sort of thing. So I was slow to report that story, even though my viewers kept asking about it. But my thoughts on it, my thoughts after investigating is that I don't support it. I don't support it based on what they're demanding. The German farmers are upset that they're going to have their subsidies cut. Well, I don't care for subsidies for farmers. Why are we subsidizing farmers? If farmers can't grow food for a profit, then something's wrong with the system or with their business model. As a high school student, I milked cows every day, in the morning and the evening, jerseys and a Guernsey. We took the milk, we filtered it, we bottled it, plastic jugs, and then we also used it and we took the butterfat off of it because the high butterfat content of jerseys is much higher than other cows, and we made butter out of it. We sold the butter. We sold milk for $1.25 or $1.50 a gallon, while at the Kroger's, which is the department store like ShopRite or Pick and Pay, or UK, I'm drawing a blank here. Sainsbury's, and that's not the good one. Anyway, Tesco. So Kroger's was like that, or Safeway. And Kroger's would sell it for $4 a gallon and it was subsidized. The government was giving those large dairy producers money, and they were selling it for $4 a gallon, fleecing consumers. I don't believe in subsidies for farming. I don't believe in subsidies for most anything. There are exceptions, and there are times to entice businesses to come for economic growth. But when you make people depend on subsidies, when you create subsidies that are not earned, you distort the marketplace. That's not true capitalism. It's not capitalism, and I'm a capitalist. And so I have a problem with those subsidies. And I'm not in support of the German farmers striking because they're going to have their subsidies cut. Now, if the German farmers are complaining because they're being told to reduce their emissions unfairly, they're being told that they can only plant certain crops at certain times, or they're being hit with a tax that's based on agriculture, then I would support them. But when Tesco, when they just want money from the taxpayer, and that's what they're complaining about, and they're going to disrupt traffic, they're going to dump their sewage in front of people. Look, the Dutch farmers, what they did, I supported that. The Dutch farmers are being harassed and they're trying to drive them out of business. They're the most productive farmers in the world. The Netherlands is the second largest agricultural exporting country in the world. Did you know that? It's insane. A tiny little country basically sits in a swamp, and they're a huge exporter of agricultural products, and they're trying to destroy that. Why? Why? To what end? To reduce the population? I visited my friend in Munich. Her family told me to say that I've never been to Germany, only Bavaria. Well, okay, listen. If you go from Baden-Württemberg, or you go from Hesse and you drive into, or even come from Österreich or from the Czech Republic or from the Schweiz or not France, France doesn't border, but all those places that border Bavaria, when you drive in, each province, each Land, each of the Länder in Germany has its own sign, just like, welcome to Maryland, welcome to Pennsylvania, welcome to Indiana. It's the same in Germany. Welcome to Nordrhein-Westfalen und Hesse und Niedersachsen und Schleswig-Holstein and all of these places. Well, when you go to Bavaria, it doesn't say welcome to Bavaria, it says welcome to the independent country of Bavaria. Freistaat Bayern. They are still independent. Remember, they had their own monarchy and only disappeared in the 20th century. Even under the German Empire, they still had their own monarch, and that's all gone now. The Bavarians are very independent from that standpoint, but that's kind of died off a bit. So, for instance, the ruling party, the Christian Democratic Union, has a Bavarian counterpart known as the CSU, the Christian Socialist Union, which is ironic because they're not socialist, and they're more Christian than the rest of the CDU is. But anyway, the CSU is located in Bavaria, and their standard bearer for a long time was Franz Josef Strauss, whom the airport is named after up there in, well, he wasn't from the CSU, he's from the FDP, but he's from Bavaria. And the airport in Munich is named after him. He's one of the most famous Bavarians of recent history. So 22.5, I am not going to beat the other day, but pretty close. Good day for electricity here, generation here. And by the way, I've now surpassed the 1 megawatt of power generation. I have now produced, either consumed and or fed back into the grid, over 1 megawatt of electricity since November. There you go. 186 kilowatts so far this year. Still at 3.77 at 4 o'clock. That's not bad. So maybe I'll get there and break it. Germany, close to Austria, have some dodgy names for some towns written on signs. They do. They do that. They do that. The Pennsylvania SP are arresting a non-subsidized Amish farmer for doing just that with milk and eggs. Yeah, I saw that, and I don't know what the beef is here in Pennsylvania, but in Ohio, that was permissible when I was a dairy farmer. You could you could sell unpasteurized milk. We sold pasteurized and we sold unpasteurized. Some people prefer their milk unpasteurized, but it spoils quickly, so you've got to take care of it. Lunch with somebody whose brother lives in Germany said there's not a lot of support. No, there isn't, because they want subsidies. They want your money and my money to subsidize their own business, and people don't like that. So anyway, are there any Tesco's in the English Riviera? Wait, Rose. I don't think there's any Tesco's in Spain. Don't think there's any Tesco's in Spain. Given my choice, Sainsbury, not my favorite place. Of all of Asda, not my favorite place. Tesco, pretty good. I also like the Lidls in the UK. The Lidls are pretty good. They're a discount place. Lidl is a German company that's expanded all over the world. They're even here in the States now. I wish there was one near me. There's one in Delaware, but none here. But Lidls are pretty good in the UK. I go to Lidl's. So when I'm traveling through the UK, you'll typically find me stopping in a Lidl and buying some Black Forest ham, some Schwarzwälder Schinken, and some Emmental cheese, or Swiss cheese, as people like to call it, and the closest equivalent to Brötchen that they have. And I buy those, and I make my sandwiches, and buy some crisps, although the crisps in the UK are crap. Oh my goodness, you can almost never find decent crisp or potato chips in the UK. All you get are crappy ones. And quite frankly, the ones in the US these days aren't very good either. The good ones I've had were those Lay's in South Africa and also in Germany. Oh man, it used to be Balsen, and now they've changed to Lorenz, but it's the same thing. But Balsen makes the best paprika potato chips on the planet. I would kill for those things to be here. I would eat them all the time. Mike says there's a Lidl in Westchester. Well, Westchester's a long way from me, man. And oh, by the way, Mike, it cost me $38 in tolls to go there and come back. $38.20. $19.10 to drive to Philadelphia on the turnpike, and $19.10 to come back. Then add in my gas and everything. But the folks with Mike helped ease that pain a little bit. But $38 just for tolls, man. Wow. $38 for tolls. I just got a toll bill for $47. I'm like, $47? What's this? I forgot about the Philadelphia trip to the Westchester trip. That was $38 of that $47. I avoid the Pennsylvania Turnpike like the plague because it's just criminal. It's all about Soros and the Gates. That's true. Yes, Fleshin is Welsh, but ethnically he's got a little more diverse background than that. But he is Welsh. He claims to be Welsh, and he's from Wales. Yep. Oh, don't apologize, Mike. That's a fact. In fact, let me get it here. I've got it here somewhere. Right, we're close. Let me see. Where's it at? Well, maybe I followed it already. Come on. Where's it at? I think I followed it already. I must have followed it already, but it came in last week. $47, man. $19.10 to use the turnpike. Ooh, I'm getting some loud frequency here. $19.10 to drive from here to the exit for Westchester. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't apologize, man. Yeah, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot is right. That's just theft. What are they doing with that money? That's one driver on one day. Tens of thousands of drivers every day generating that revenue going to the state. That trip when I used to come here when I was going to the War College distance education, that trip from Westchester to Harrisburg, not even to where I get on with, that's another $5. But from Harrisburg, or not Harrisburg, from Carlisle to Westchester, the exit there, that used to be $8, $7.75, something like that. $8. Now it's $19.10 just a decade later. Isn't that crazy? You file stuff? I do file stuff, actually. Not as well as I should. There it is. I just saw it. Hang on. Oh, no, this is an older one. That one didn't get filed yet. Pennsylvania Turnpike. Okay, that one isn't filed. That isn't it. Okay. I do file stuff. I have to file stuff. I have lots of responsibilities. I write. I research. I was doing a university program last year for the beekeeping. Also, I've got investments and savings and bills and things like that, plus research for this program and for videos that I make. So yeah, I have to file things. My filing isn't as effective as it once was, but I still file things. Yep. Fleshton says, no, we have great crisp. No, you don't, man. Your crisp are crap, man. Oh God, those beef flavored crisps. Oh, my goodness. I make a paprika and Worcester sauce, olive oil mix that cover that potato. Wow, that sounds good, Dogbreaker. Gypsy Backpackers is falling asleep. I think a lot of people are. It's late in South Africa. It's after 11 o'clock. We're going to wrap it up here shortly, folks. Hester has file 13. Yeah, a lot of people have file 13. PATC agreed the bureaucracy is crazy and much of the toll booth are mechanized. They're almost all mechanized. And it's ridiculous. What really sucks is that when I first moved here, my car was registered in Maryland because I bought it in Maryland when I was in Africa and picked it up after I came back from Germany. It was registered in Maryland and it used my aunt's address. So when you go through those toll by plate things, which there were only a handful of them, there was a bridge on the east going across the Delaware River into New Jersey at one point, and the only way you could pay was, and I was going to Princeton for a ball game near Princeton, and the only way you could pay the toll was they sent you the thing. Well, I never received anything in the mail. Well, because they mailed it to Maryland to my aunt. She didn't know what it was. I don't think she ever saw it because she's gone all the time, and I never got it. So then they want me to pay a fine. Same thing in New York City. It was just ridiculous. Now that my plates are Pennsylvania plates, I get the toll things. They come quickly now, but they're not quick enough. The system is a scam. It doesn't give you a grace period. They send the thing usually it's dated 10 days before it comes to me. They don't mail it. They print the bill. Then they wait a week and mail it. That's the scumbags for the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Then you get it. Because, I'm near Harrisburg. That's where it comes from. Harrisburg is where the Turnpike Commission is at. I get the bill, usually with maybe 10 days to pay it, max. I've been overseas on a couple occasions, and the bill comes in. I don't have a bill. I can't pay it. Can't make it up. No, I'm not using Easy Pay. I refused to use Easy Pay for a long time because it was a way to spy on me. But quite frankly, it doesn't matter now, to be honest, because now they simply take pictures of my license plate. They're still spying on me. It's another corrupt way the government can track you, and they can create a false narrative of where you were, what you did, and when you went somewhere to make it sound reasonable in a trial when they want to go after you. You see? Mr. Mike entered the Turnpike at 3:55 this afternoon. Then he drove 70 kilometers to Reading. He got off at Reading at this time. So it's possible that he was in Reading when this homicide was committed. He was there on that date. You see how they use that? And for a whole host of other things. But it doesn't matter now. I'm over 23 kilowatts for the day, and it's down to 3.31, but still, that's better sun than we get most of the time the past several days. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so it's very, very frustrating. I don't like to take the photographs, and I refuse to use Easy Pay. I don't do it because I don't trust the system. This system as it is already double billed me multiple occasions. I entered the Turnpike at Harrisburg coming back from the airport on more than one occasion, and I've been hit with 2 or 3 charges of entering the Turnpike at that time, and then getting hit on the other side, exiting the Turnpike at the same time. They bill me my same license plate at the exact same moment 3 times. And do you know how you resolve that? You have to write a form and send in a dispute. Then the whole thing is in abeyance, and then they hit you with late fees. They did that to me. I had to all call and sit on the phone for an hour to get that taken off. It's just no. Easy Pay is a scam, and it's a scam now because they're doubling the rate. I pay twice or almost twice what someone else pays on the toll if they have Easy Pay. Easy Pay is one of those little things you stick in the windscreen, and it takes it. So, hey, Freelance Kane, how's it going? I do take the back roads normally, Mike, but taking 30 to come over to there takes a long time, and I didn't have time that day. I was broadcasting, and I had things to do, and then I came over there, so I couldn't do that. So anyway, almost at 100 kilowatts for this week, that's good considering I had a day where I got not even a kilowatt. Wow. So take the back roads. I normally do. I avoid the Turnpike like crazy. I go on 81, 83, and 15 in this area, and avoid the Turnpike. Rarely do I take it. I used to take a lot. I don't mind paying a small toll for maintenance of the road, but Pennsylvania has the second highest fuel taxes in the country. They're already getting tons of money out of my pocket to pay for repair of roads. Why do I need to keep paying for a turnpike that was built in the 1930s and was paid for over 50 years ago? The entire cost of the turnpike was paid for 50 years ago. And it is not maintained in the fashion that for the rate that I'm paying. It's outrageous. It's like paying French tolls. Boy, the French tolls were outrageous. Man, that stuff hit me hard. In fact, I got to start figuring all that out for my taxes. That was a lot of money for those tolls. A lot of money. Anyway, we're over 2 hours. We're at 90 likes. We got some super chat. And thank you for the super chat that came in from Gabriel. And we also had the other one came in from, I'm drawing a blank right now. It's been a long stream. Let me just take a look here. Supers. Okay. Usina gave one early on, £10. Thank you for Usina. And Daniel Prinsley gave 500 yesterday. Thank you for that, Daniel. And we had Hank Klomper as well. And then George gave 70. So we had 3 on this broadcast. Thank you guys for the super chats. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patience. And as I needed a break for a while earlier today, I really did need that. So refreshed a little bit now, but I've got stuff to do. Hester's off to bed. Very informative. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you all for being here. Beekeeping, thriving. Okay, cool beans. All right. And you guys take care. Have a lovely evening. And we'll catch you here tomorrow on the program. Take care of yourselves. It's always a pleasure. Thanks a lot. God bless and have a good night, everybody. And we'll see you next time here on Chris Wyatt Reports. Cheers.